Hey guys, welcome back to the channel. Today we're going to be watching a video called Life at Minimum Wage, USA versus Germany, Housing, Utilities, Food and More. I don't know how it works in Germany, but in the USA, the minimum wage, I think, really does depends on, it also depends on the job, actually. It's not just like a federal, well, there is a federal minimum wage, but it depends on on the type of job, and also by state. Like, it varies a lot by state, so it's not like a set minimum wage. Although I think there is a federal sort of like minimum, and obviously, like, depending on the state where the job's located, well, it's gonna vary, but usually I don't really know how much is. I think it's like $7 an hour. I'm sort of like eyeballing it. I have no idea. But in Germany, I have no idea. I would guess it's actually like it's federal and it doesn't really vary by state, because a lot of countries, I think most of the world, I think, has just a minimum wage, but it's just for the whole country. It doesn't really matter what state or what area or what region like you're working, it's a minimum wage and it's set. I think the USA is sort of like the outlier in that sense, I think, but I have no idea. And of course, this is going to be like comparing, I'm thinking like comparing like how, like if you can actually afford to live on a minimum wage in both countries, which I'm thinking no. In neither of them. That's my guess, but I don't know, maybe it's gonna surprise us. So let's check it out and comment, like, subscribe, and start.
I mean, even as an American, I found that insane. These are people who are earning a good income and they're so much in debt.
I'm guessing it's an American that lives in Germany?
Depending on your location, minimum wage in the US ranges from about $7.25 per hour in Tennessee to $16.10 per hour in Washington, D.C. Still, the vast majority of even single people who are working full-time at local minimum wage aren't making enough to get by. According to MIT's Living Wage Calculator, there's not a single state in the entire United States that offers a minimum wage that's in line with the living wage for even a single adult with no dependents.
That's crazy.
But this isn't a uniquely American problem.
It's a worldwide
Over here
thing.
In Germany, nearly 1 in 5 persons in dependent employment, around 19%, worked in the low-wage sector. This means that roughly 7.5 million jobs were low-wage jobs earning less than a gross 12.50 euros per hour, the majority of which are found in the accommodation and food services sector. So what does life look like for those working minimum wage, or workers with hourly positions that also have families on either side of the Atlantic Ocean? In today's video, we're taking into account the cost of living factors such as housing, utilities, food, and transportation to ultimately try to answer the question, who really has more money at the end of the day? And who goes into debt? So
I think both of them.
Let's get started. Now, if you didn't catch last week's video, I highly suggest going and checking it out because it'll give greater context for the incomes that I'll be using to base today's analysis off of. Plus, you can learn more about how workers just starting out at minimum wage and those who have risen through the ranks to hold more managerial roles in the fast food industry have fared after taking into account taxes, social contributions, other pensions, and insurances. Yeah, just be sure to go watch that one first. But in the meantime, I'm going to show you the base values once more, again, because they're going to be the starting point for this video. Our single worker in the US is a 19-year-old man named Steve. After accounting for taxes, FICA, Social Security, a small savings, health insurance, and long-term care insurance, Steve left last week's analysis with $22,163.49, or approximately $1,847 a month.
Okay.
Our single worker in Germany is also a 19-year-old man whose name is Max.
Okay, this is
He has the same occupation, professional experience, and personal dynamics. However, living in Germany, he has different relative earnings and contributes to various social contributions, which all affect his take-home pay. So at the end of last week's video, Max had 19,706 euros and 7 cents, or around 1,642 euros per month in take-home pay. But I didn't want to just analyze single workers working minimum wage at McDonald's. I also wanted to give some perspective on what hourly wage workers could earn with some experience and what happens when their personal dynamics change and they have kids and all of the expenses that come with it.
Yeah, like what about housing?
Although both scenarios in the US and Germany do see greater yearly income, their liabilities and responsibilities have changed. So we found that our American Steve and Stephanie's family had $64,775.06, or around $5,398 a month in disposable income. And in contrast, Max and Mila, our German family, had 74,119 euros and 62 cents, or approximately 6,177 euros per month. So in short, where we actually saw pretty similar incomes between our single workers, the greatest difference was there for our families, with our family in Germany actually having about $13,000 more in disposable income once you adjust for the current exchange rate.
Oh, okay.
Hi guys, you know, like many of you, we're a busy family. Between our jobs, kids, errands, school, and everyday activities here in the Black Forest, many of you have asked me before, how exactly do we find time to do it all? Well, to be honest with you guys, we don't. Not all of the time. But when I can find something that fits pretty seamlessly into our routine, while still being cost-effective and fun, I'm all here for it. Recently, we started using HelloFresh, and it's truly been a refreshing addition to our mealtime because it takes the stress out of meal planning and shopping while also making our meals fun, fresh, and delicious. Every week, we have over 30 different meals to choose from as part of our flexible subscription. Plus, they only use high-quality, fresh ingredients from certified local producers and deliver the exact amount of fresh produce, meat, and dairy in recycling packaging via sustainable, climate-neutral deliveries. Plus, because you guys watch our videos and support our channel, we can pass on an exclusive offer for you to try HelloFresh too. Use the voucher code BLACKFOREST to save up to 90 euros on your first 4 boxes of HelloFresh in Germany. And make sure to click that link down in the description to snag free shipping on your first box on top of that. So why not give them a try? Check out HelloFresh today and be sure to let us know what new recipes you've been able to explore and create.
Housing. I think it's going to be more expensive in the USA.
Okay, so the first variable we should account for is shelter. But there are a lot of variables relative to housing that can affect the final price you pay. And when looking at minimum wage or even total household earnings that fall closer to the median income area, housing insecurity becomes a significant issue. Consider this. According to a new report by the National Low-Income Housing Coalition, people working minimum wage jobs full-time cannot afford a 2-bedroom apartment in any state.
It doesn't surprise me.
And
Shocking.
in 93% of the US counties, the same workers can't even afford a modest 1-bedroom. So given each state and locality's minimum wage, the report also found that the average minimum wage worker in the US would need to work nearly 97 hours per week to afford the average 2-bedroom home. Now, that being said, at the end of the day, on average, Germans and Americans both still spend around the same percentage.
Really?
Plus or minus 30% of net income on housing. And you know, quite honestly, it's almost impossible to do an apples to apples comparison when looking at housing. So I actually thought it would be quite interesting to use this 30% affordability ratio and actually try to see how far does that get you in the United States
That's shocking
and
to me.
in Germany, to give some context and a bit of international insight to see how far you could stretch your dollar or how far you could stretch your euro. So let's start off in the United States with Steve. In the first video, I mentioned that Steve lives in Denver, Colorado. But because Steve is single and only working minimum wage, it's a bit of a stretch to presume that the average person would have accumulated enough wealth at his age to purchase a home.
No.
So he's going to rent for this calculation.
And he's going to have roommates.
Looking at Denver, Colorado, the price for a 1-bedroom, 1-bathroom apartment fluctuates greatly depending on the neighborhood and amenities that you're looking for in that apartment. But with a monthly net income of $1,846.96, 30% is equivalent to just over $554
I don't think
a
you can
month.
rent something like
And
that
with
money.
that budget in mind, there's not a whole lot available for Steve in Denver.
Okay.
In fact, according to Zillow, there's nothing available for Steve at that price point in his own apartment anywhere in the Denver metro area. So what that means at the end of the day is that the cheapest housing option I could find for Steve in the Denver area that wasn't low-income housing specifically was this bedroom in a shared house in the neighboring community of Aurora, Colorado. Rent is $650 a month.
Okay.
Now, although he will need to furnish his home bedroom, this actually ends up being a pretty decent deal since according to the listing, the rental price includes utilities and there's a washer and dryer on site.
You know
but
what,
it does mean that by taking the cheapest option available to him, he's still paying 35% of his income on housing, which is technically unaffordable.
Yeah, and
Now,
that's
in the last
that.
video, I had actually located Max in Berlin, but quite a few of you didn't like the fact that Berlin isn't exactly as comparable to Denver. So for this analysis, I'm actually going to move him to Stuttgart. The city proper of both Stuttgart and Denver are remarkably similar in population to one another, and both are part of a larger metro area that is
Okay, so
also
similar.
pretty comparable. Now, for balance, let's assume we're going to still keep that 30% aim. So because his monthly take-home pay is 1,642 euros and 17 cents, this will give him a rental budget of just under 500 euros. So for Max, one of the cheapest options available is this studio apartment in Stuttgart. While the exact address is not shown on the listing, we do know that it's in the Feuerbach district and that there exists good connection to public transport. There's also a bakery and a gas station in the immediate vicinity and a grocery store that's just a 5-minute walk away.
Looks great.
For this apartment, cold rent, which is just base rent, is 450 euros. And the landlord indicates that Nebenkosten, which includes general cleaning, maintenance of shared spaces, trash, heating, and a prepayment towards electricity and water, in total, he spends 610 euros in this category, which again, in all fairness, is also above the affordability threshold at 37%. But unlike the American option, Max does have his own bathroom and kitchen. Now for our families, in the United States in 2022, nearly 2/3 of Americans owned a home. And with a combined net monthly income at the end of last week's video of $5,397.92 per month, it gives them a budget of around $1,619.
That's insane, but I think that's way too, that's
Again,
too
if
little.
we work within this 30% budgeting rule. But in the United States, it's important to know that property taxes in the US directly affect community resources in your immediate area. And because Steve and Stephanie have 2 kids, I'm going to move them out to the Denver suburbs to find larger homes in a better school district. So giving all of these factors in mind, if we give them a 30-year mortgage on current interest rates, we can conservatively say that they would probably be pre-approved for a home with a purchase price of around $325,000. But it's going to stretch their budget. This would only buy them a condo in Aurora, Colorado. Built in 1996, it's older and isn't a single-family home, but it does have a bedroom for each of the children, 2 bathrooms, and updated interiors, which are pretty common things that families search for in U.S. homes. In total, Steve and Stephanie's finances to afford this home will look a lot like this. The principal and interest on their loan will total $1,680. Property taxes are another $173 a month. Homeowners insurance is estimated at an additional $114 per month, and HOA fees are pretty substantial at $375 a month. But it includes 2 garage spots, snow removal, trash, water, and sewer utilities. In total, it means that they will be spending $2,342 per month, which is high and pushes them into spending about 43% of their income.
It's insane. It's half of the money.
Because this does include some utilities, and because the U.S. allows for the mortgage interest deductions on their taxes and also gives them a significant financial asset, I do kind of consider this a gray zone. Plus, when we look at apartments for rent in the area, this price for a mortgage is a pretty good deal relative to what an apartment rental cost would be. But over in Germany, whether Max and Mila rent or buy isn't as straightforward. Germany has the 2nd lowest share of homeowners of all OECD countries, which is mostly driven by housing policies that produce incentives to rent. However,
Why?
with a monthly take-home pay of 6,176 euros and 64 cents, it actually means that they could afford housing costs of around 1,853
I think that's
euros
a good
month,
budget.
which would allow them to rent an apartment in West Stuttgart like this one. According to the listing, cold rent or base rent is 1,400 euros, with Nebenkosten amounting to additional 150 euros, which covers heat, building maintenance, and trash. The apartment boasts 2.5-meter high ceilings, as well as downtown views, 2 usable cellar storage rooms in the basement, and a large bicycle room that's easily accessible via the inner courtyard. The property does only have 1 bathroom, and the kids will have to share a room, which makes it different from the condo purchased by our American family, but not unusual for what's typically rented by German families. However, this apartment notably does come with a completed kitchen, which isn't always included in German apartments. It also has a generous outdoor space and is located in a pretty desirable neighborhood in Stuttgart, which is an advantage over the American option.
I think it's going to be, I don't know, Germany is probably going to be more expensive.
The next factor we need to consider is the cost of utilities. And it's a cost of living factor that has unsurprisingly been front and center in our news reporting as of late. The current average rate in the United States for electricity as of January 2023, which is the latest data available, is 16.8 cents per kilowatt hour, according to the US Bureau of Labor Statistics. In contrast, energy prices for Stuttgart, according to Check24, are roughly 34.54 cents per kilowatt hour, over double the cost. Interestingly, energy prices here in Germany have actually stabilized and even come down since we made the first iteration of this video comparing the costs between the US and Germany. Now, to be fair, even before the war in Ukraine, Germany had one of the highest energy prices in the world.
Really?
But thanks to robust government subsidies, in combination with a pretty mild winter here in Germany, well, the cost per kilowatt hour has actually been a lot lower than what they initially predicted that it would have been, could have been, which is quite interesting. But on to the numbers. Steve's calculation is honestly quite simple because his rent includes utilities. So although they aren't specific, I'm honestly going to presume that this is all utilities. That's water, sewer, trash, electric, and or gas and internet. In short, we're not going to see a change in his monthly expenses in this category. But over in Germany for Max, once more, it is indicated on the rental listing that he has Nebenkosten, and it includes general cleaning and maintenance of the shared space, trash, heating, and a prepayment towards electricity and water for an additional 210 euros per month. So again, most landlords do a pretty good job of estimating these costs. So realistically, the only additional utilities I need to include on top of this is internet and cable. Currently, an internet and TV package from Telecom is 60 euros and 95 cents a month. And this not only includes high-speed streaming with glass fiber, but also a Netflix subscription and payment to the Rundfunkbeitrag, which covers basic public television and radio, is 18 euros and 36 cents per month. In total, it really only amounts to just over 79 euros per month. But let's go take a look at our families. For Steve and Stephanie's home in Aurora, we do know that their high HOA fee includes trash, water, and sewer. So those utilities have already been accounted for. However, when it comes to electricity, things can be a little bit different. The property listing doesn't give us any information as to whether the home is fully electric or if they use gas utilities. But it does appear that most of their appliances are electric and similar properties in the area are also fully electric. Excel is the electric provider in Aurora, so if we use their online residential pricing structure and adjust their rates for a home that's approximately 1,300 square feet, the estimated usage for 4 people in a fully electric home is 1,300 kilowatt hours per month, which would give them an electric bill of $158 per month. Internet and cable is likely going to be something similar to this Xfinity high-speed cable and internet plan, costing $130 a month. And it's a big plan, but this gives them flexibility if one of them works from home or wants to stream shows. In total, for electricity, internet, and cable, Steve and Stephanie will pay $288 additionally per month. And last but not least, our German family. I mentioned earlier that Nebenkosten of 150 euros covered heat, building maintenance, and trash. which means that we essentially only need to calculate the cost of electricity and internet and cable.
Those are
Now,
the most
it's important
expensive
for our
things.
American audience to know that electric use in Germany is usually quite different than the usage in the United States. For one,
Why?
German apartments don't typically have AC. So in the summer months, that's a significant reduction in use.
Yeah.
But also, heating is typically covered by an entire building system, just like we see in this scenario here. So we're also not paying to run an electric furnace. In short, this means that the per kilowatt hour usage is
just
lower
lights.
because they're only paying for the energy to turn on lighting and appliances.
Yeah, and, like,
While there
your
are a
TV.
lot of variables, for a 4-person home, 308 kilowatt hours per month is what online calculators seem to come to a consensus on.
Cheaper than I
So given
thought.
that we know energy costs are currently 34.54 cents per kilowatt hour in Stuttgart, this would mean that they should budget 106 euros and 38 cents on electricity. Tack on the same internet and TV package from Telecom, plus the mandatory payment to the Rundfunkbeitrag, and you arrive at a total of 185 euros and 69 cents per month.
They got at the USA.
Next up is
People have to have
transportation.
a car.
Now, anyone who has visited Europe is well aware of the fact that a great network of public transportation options are available here. And while Germans love their cars and a speedy trip down the Autobahn, the reality is they still have fewer cars on average than Americans.
Of course.
And as we've discussed on this channel time and time again, quite honestly, in many localities in Germany, you don't necessarily need
a car.
because of this
Amazing.
robust public transit system, as well as pretty great cycling infrastructure. Yeah, you can get around quite easily and safely in ways that don't really exist in
The American mind
majority of the
cannot
United
comprehend.
States. So let's see the effect that this has on our calculations. Starting with Steve in the United States, let's presume he has a car. And in the States, the average used car payment, according to NerdWallet, is $525. Tack on car insurance in Colorado, which if you purchase the most basic coverage, that just gets you road legal with liability insurance only. A policy from State Farm will cost you $34 a month or $408 per year. Now, unsurprisingly, gasoline is much cheaper in the US than here in Germany. And honestly, since we don't know his commute, driving habits, or car type, we're gonna have to ballpark this one.
Yeah, just
According to
average.
Kelley Blue Book, the 5-year average monthly cost for gasoline for a mid-sized car is $129. And I actually think that's a pretty good conservative estimate.
Yeah.
So in total, he spends $822.25 on transportation costs per
God.
month.
That's
But
like-
over in
that's
Germany with
too
Max, he's a young guy living in Stuttgart, and he has
A
easy
bike.
access to buses and S-Bahns that'll take him almost anywhere he needs to get within the city. Plus, he's very close to major airports, train stations that are also accessible by public transit or cycling paths.
He doesn't have to
So if
worry.
we purchase him an unlimited monthly pass for public transit for the entire Stuttgart network, it costs him just over 205 euros a month. But I think we should probably also tack on a car sharing subscription from Stadtmobil for those times where he does feel like he needs a car. It's pretty cheap. It only costs him €9.50 a month, plus €1.40 an hour, and a per kilometer surcharge of 23 cents per kilometer. It's a little convoluted, but essentially you don't actually pay for gas or insurance. You just pay for
the
how
use-
long and how
yeah.
far you go. So,
God,
presuming
that was
he's only going
incredible.
to use this a couple weekends a month on an as-needed basis,
Yeah.
I'm going to round it to 30 euros a month. In total, it means that he really only pays 235 euros and 83 cents a month in transportation costs. But over in the United States, for our family, it's a pretty safe assumption that by living in
God.
the US with 2 kids, both Steve
need-
and Stephanie would each
You're gonna have a
likely
car.
need to have a car. I'm going to presume that Steve and Stephanie both buy used cars, with Stephanie purchasing
They can't
this
afford
car
anything
for
else.
$26,998 and Steve purchasing this car for $16,998. Spreading out both of their payments over 4 years at current interest rates, they will pay a combined $1,260 per month. And assuming they take out full coverage
Oh my
car
God,
insurance in
the
Colorado,
insurance.
which according to bankrate.com is $2,019 a year, It amounts for 2 cars to $336.50 a month. And lastly, again, because one car is a sedan and the other is a midsize SUV, the Kelley Blue Book estimate for gasoline costs will be $169 and $176 respectively, totaling $1,941.50 per month. For Max and Mila, things get a bit complicated because they're still located in a pretty well-connected area of Stuttgart from a public transit perspective. If they work within the city, schools and kitas are close by, honestly, they may not need a car at all. They could probably get by with public transit and car sharing just like our single worker. But because the majority of families in Germany do own at least one car, I really do think that's still a fair starting point for this comparison. So I do think we should include one unlimited pass for the Stuttgart public transit system, which again is just over 205 euros a month. But honestly, let's presume that with their financial situation, Max and Mila purchased a used car like this one, with a purchase price of 24,289 euros spread out over a 4-year loan, such as this one from Deutsche Bank. It's going to give them a monthly rate of about 440 euros a month. Car insurance through Allianz for the exact car with comprehensive coverage for a single driver with no accidents is quoted at 1,072 euros a year, or about 89 euros a month. And presuming they drive 10,000 kilometers a year, at the current rate for gasoline, with a car that gets 7.8 liters per 100 kilometers, this is going to cost them 109 euros and 20 cents per month. In total, together for their transportation costs, they're going to pay 844 euros and 54 cents.
That's more expensive than I thought. A lot more expensive than I thought, actually.
All right,
I think it's going to be the same in both of them.
It's actually going to be intentionally brief because just at the end of last year, we actually made a video comparing grocery store costs between the US and Germany. So what this means for our scenario is that in the US, the average cost of food per month for one person will likely range anywhere from $150 to $300, depending on your age and eating habits. However, these national averages vary based on, again, where you live and the quality of food that you happen to buy. That being said, estimates provided by the USDA suggests that a young single man has a monthly grocery bill of $265.93.
I would believe it.
In Germany, Destatis estimates that for a single man living alone, the average costs for food, beverages, and tobacco, interestingly, those are grouped together, is 194 euros per month. For our US family of 4, their estimated expenditures for groceries go all the way up to $903.19 per month. Again, I'm using data from the USDA Dietary Reference Intake and online research database. And lastly, for Max and Mila, Destatis estimates that their average spending for a family of 4 would be around 467 euros per month.
Oh my God, I'm so nervous.
So here's the thing. This is the point at which in the first iteration of this video, I stopped the recording, I gave you the final numbers, and we wrapped up the video. But today I want to do something a little bit different because I think there are a few extra expenses that I should add in. And ultimately, it really goes to sort of hammer the final point of this video.
Not extra expenses.
Well. In 2023, all of our workers will likely have a cell phone with a data plan. They will probably also need a few extra pairs of clothes, toiletries, and maybe the kids need clothes for sports or extracurricular activities and school supplies. Then, of course, there's entertainment. And, maybe it's not extravagant,
forgot about that.
You might want to catch a movie, buy a book, go out to eat once in a while, or grab a beer with your friends. And this isn't even everything. But at the end, our total estimation comes out looking like this. So for me, this is what I find super interesting because probably the biggest critique I had on last week's video was that Stephanie's income was way too high. Many of you said that by making as much as she made, it wasn't truly painting a picture of what life is like when you're working hourly wages in a low-income household. And to be honest, that's totally fair. There are a lot of families out there that are making significantly less than Steve and Stephanie while still having the same or very similar expenditures. But what I calculated today, I don't personally think is extraordinarily extravagant by American standards. You know, they're not living in a standalone home, they're living in a condo. And yeah, they do have 2 cars with payments, but I mean, she's making 6 figures, right? Yet still, after accounting for all of the everyday expenses, our American family went into debt. And at their joint household income, they wouldn't qualify for WIC, food stamps, or low-income housing assistance.
Of course it wouldn't.
And that's my point. I think we really have a gross misunderstanding of what a livable wage actually is in the United States. Because to bring this American family, which by the way makes $150,000 a year in gross income, out of debt, well, you know, beyond just simply saying, well, cut out all of the fluff, you know, they don't get to have fun, they don't get to eat out, they don't need new clothes.
They don't need coffee.
That's still not gonna cut it.
Yeah.
At least 3 major things have to happen for them. For starters, they're probably not going to be able to own a home and build wealth through home ownership. They're gonna need to rent a much, much cheaper apartment somewhere even further away from work, which then would probably cost them more in gas.
More gas.
And realistically, they're probably only going to be able to afford 1 used car payment and essentially just hope that that second car is both fully paid off and doesn't break down or need any form of maintenance. And last but not least, this family is going to need to pray that they don't get sick or incur any form of major medical bill. And this is again for a family earning double the median gross household yearly income in the United States. All right, guys, so, you know, I think that's a pretty sobering end to this video. And I think that's a good place to stop. I think we have a lot of food for thought, and I'm personally really looking forward to the comment section below, just hearing from you guys on what you think about the final numbers and about ultimately what this means for the quality of life between the United States and Germany. But as always, if you enjoyed this video, please be sure to hit that like button, share the video with your friends, and if you would like to see more from the Black Forest family, be sure to hit that subscribe button and the notification bell. So, I'll see you next Sunday. Cheers!
Okay, yeah, this was incredibly interesting. I'm kind of shocked. I'm like she said, it was a lot of food for thought. I think it's kind of, I don't know, it's kind of crazy, and it was so funny because I was like, she was like this fictional family and this fictional people, and I was like so nervous about Steve. Like, the American family, I was worried about the American family and Steve, like both of them. The ones in Germany, I was like a little more like, well, I think they can make it actually. But I don't know, but it's like some costs really did surprise me. I think, I don't know, because there's a lot of like the amount of like public transport. I know obviously like in Germany it's gonna be better. You have to pay for like a monthly pass, and that was good. But I was well, it's worth it, right? Like you see, and it's like 200 euros, and he's like, yeah, it's worth it. But I don't know why I thought it was gonna be cheaper, especially because considering like the amount of money they're earning as a minimum wage sort of like fictional sort of recreation. I was like, I don't know, I'm seeing those expenses go up, and I'm like, oh my god, how are they gonna afford anything? I'm so stressed. But I know it's kind of like I'm kind of laughing about it because I know it's like, well, they're fictional, but I know that a lot of people, that's the reality for a lot of people. So it's like, well, that stops being that funny because it's like, I know a lot of people are in this situation, and like she said, they don't really earn, like they don't really earn that much money as we're sort of like the example, they earn less, and they are under the same conditions. Like maybe they need obviously they need housing. If they have families, well, they need to support their kids. So it is kind of like, well, it is sobering. I think this was a really interesting video, and I think at the same time like kind of depressing actually, because it's like, well, you know, it's like what can you do? It's kind of crazy, and it's like I really did like the analysis, because you can see like how everything adds up, and it's like at the beginning you're like, well, it's gonna be good, like they have like a decent enough budget sort of, I think, But after you're seeing like how like the expenses, how expensive everything gets, it's like, well, yeah, it's not like that. And something that I really did, well, I was sort of expecting it because I kind of knew it already, like because of just like living, you're gonna get the sense of like, well, I think I know where this is going. But the thing, like them being like I think apparently like the ideal thing is that they were supposed to earn 30% of their income was supposed to go to like housing, and neither of them actually like can, like it's very hard obviously to live in a place where you're just like, oh, I'm just giving like 30% of my salary to like housing, because it's more, it ends up being more. One of them, I can't remember which one was in this fictional examples, or was like over 50% or something. And I know that's the reality for like a lot of people. I think I would venture to say that's the reality. And the ones that actually spend like 30% on their rent, it's like 5% or like 10% of people like worldwide. I don't think like that's where the money goes. Like it goes to housing, and that's why when people say like, oh, they, like she said, they're going to go into debt. Like if this sort of like projection is the one they're following, they're going to go into debt. And it's funny when people say like, oh yeah, like you need to like cut expenses because you're going to get into debt, or you're like, oh, money's tight. And it's like, well, yeah, but it's not like it's a systematic problem. It's not like you're not gonna, oh yeah, just by saving, like I'm gonna not get coffee, and like she said, like I'm not gonna like buy a pair of sneakers, and I'm not gonna like, what the other thing that she said, like I'm not gonna eat out, something like that. And it's like you're never gonna save enough money just by cutting on those like little things. You're never gonna save enough money to like pay your mortgage or to like actually rent a home on your own. So it's funny that when people are like, oh well, you need to like maybe like budget better, it's like you can see like this, it's like I'm not budgeting better, like it's the reality. I think that this is like the cost of living is crazy. And it's sort of like, well, I was sort of expecting, yet not just in the USA, also in Germany. Although obviously I think Germany has it better. I think obviously you can actually live with a minimum wage. But obviously the USA couple, like they can't. They absolutely can't. And obviously like it really does. It's crazy. And that's obviously taken into account when she said like, and those are like, we said like the big expenses, like, obviously housing, transport, and utilities, and food, obviously. But, in real life, you're going to have to do a lot of other things. You're going to have some other expenses. Like, of course, you're going to have a phone. You're going to need a cellular plan. You're going to have a data plan, and obviously you're not going to just go to your house. Like people have to, like, you go out to like, I don't know. It's not obviously like, oh, I'm going to go every single day if you don't have the money. But, obviously entertainment, everyone needs to go out in a while, even if it's just like, I don't know, grab a cup of coffee with some friends, that's going to cost money. A beer with some friends, that's also going to cost money. And that's just like, in a conservative way, because a lot of people do actually have actual hobbies, and a lot of people actually do other things, so go out more often, go out, go to the movies, go to the bar, I don't know, like whatever, because obviously human beings need entertainment. Like it's not gonna be all just like work and then I go home. So, and of course, it's pretty unrealistic to think like, especially like, oh, if you're in the winter and, oh, I'm not going to buy like a winter jacket, or I don't know, like snow boots. I don't know, just like regular expensive that occur just by living. So it's like taking into account like all those little like things. It's like, oh my God. And they're like, it gets very expensive. And of course, the health thing, like if you just by counting, you don't get sick, obviously, because like if you get sick, like all this budget that was like carefully planned, it's gonna go like kaput. Like no, it's not gonna worth anything, because, well, you had all this like little expenses. But yeah, it was incredibly interesting, and like I said, I think I don't know, it's kind of crazy. I will say that the car sharing thing, I didn't know that was a thing in Germany, and I love that. I had no idea it was like that. I think it was a really cool option, because I think Because if you have like great public transport, like why would you need a car? But like she said, of you like maybe you want to go out, like I don't know, maybe it's like at the same time, like why would you need a car if you have like such a great public transport? You have like great train systems, and you want to go out of town, just like go and train, right? But I get what she means. Sometimes you just want to like no, I want to go on a road trip and I want to visit like some specific places, and I don't know, I don't want to go by train. So I didn't know that it was apparently like very popular in Germany, just like that car sharing service. I think that's sort of like the name, but it was like actually real cheap. I was like, well, you know what? I think it's cheaper than actually like buying a car, because like she said, you don't really actually pay for gas. You're just paying for like the use of the car and how much mileage you're getting out of it. Like, of course, if you're going, I don't know, a place that's like 5 hours away, of course you're gonna you don't have to pay the kilometers. But you know what, I think in the end probably it's cheaper, especially if you don't really go out like that often, you know, out of town, and you have like good public transport. You don't actually need your car, or maybe you have a bike. I think that's great. I would love to know more about those services, those car services, and like how come everyone doesn't like just do that? Because it's like, well, it's cheaper and it's I think better long term. I love that. I had no idea that was a thing, because I'm like, well, you're thinking, well, I'm gonna rent a car. It's more like you're sort of like a tourist in a city, or you need a car specifically for something. But apparently it's super common there. It's like, oh, let's just rent a car and go I don't know, somewhere. And it's like, well, it's cheap, so definitely do that. And I'm guessing if you actually like go grab a bunch of friends and actually like rent this car and use this service, it's gonna be even cheaper. So I love that. I had no idea that was a thing, but great for them. I don't know if it's a thing in other places in Europe, but yeah, incredibly interesting video. And again, kind of depressing. I think things should probably change, but just like worldwide, and again, the housing thing, crazy, and yeah, so that's kind of like the big thing. But yeah, this was incredibly interesting, and I'll see you next time. Bye.